Hello, this is Andrew, and this is a Turbo Rocks DIY build kit for Realplate Plus Wahoo Kicker Edition. The Realplate Plus is a rocker plate for an indoor trainer. You can buy the whole thing from Turbo Rocks, but the cost of shipping the thing from the UK to the US was prohibitive, so I decided to go for the kit. The kit is 115 pounds, which admittedly seems like a lot for, 5 bushings, 2 inner tubes, some hardware and some furniture pads, and a couple drawings, and the instructions on how to assemble it. But one, I don't have to figure out how to do it. I can just follow the directions, hopefully. And because of that, it is a small amount of a lot of money, but a small amount of money if it works. And that's kind of what I was looking for, is a way to make riding on the trainer for long periods of time more comfortable and less boring. I'm usually fine for an hour, hour and a half, but more than that, from a comfort perspective and from a boredom perspective, it would be nice to have a little bit more, because winter is long and it sucks, and I need to do something if I want to keep fit over the winter time. So that's the plan, is just to assemble all this stuff. And this is not going to be a how to assemble it. This is going to be a does it work kind of review. But I wanted to get these thoughts out there before I assembled it, and then get it on the trainer and ride it, and then provide the thoughts on whether or not it actually works, and if it's better than the 3/4 inch foam interlocking pads that I have underneath the trainer right now, which actually do make a big difference versus having nothing underneath the trainer. But hopefully this is, next level. Sorry about the noise. I'm in a barn and it's raining, but I had the space here to lay out the rocker plate on the plywood, and I'm struggling and getting really frustrated because the directions here, the template, is not awesome. It doesn't provide an appropriate frame of reference for points like how far down the plywood is this point, which is where you should make this cut or line to work off of, or where does this come out. So I'm having to work all those things out myself, using math that I haven't touched since high school, and so it's pretty frustrating. Here's the platform in its final, at least for now, form. I have made some modifications to it, and we'll walk through that in a bit. As I noted earlier, I didn't really intend for this to be a review of the kit that I got from Turbo Rocks, but I can't help but make it a little bit about that, because the kit is what got me started on this, but the kit is also kind of rubbish. So it's one of those things where when I bought it, I assumed that the value above the cost of the individual parts that go into this, the isolators, the clamps, etc., was the intellectual property that goes into the design. And as it turns out, that intellectual property is not very useful. I had to figure out a great many things to cut this thing out, to make it this shape and all that other stuff that should have just been on the plans. One neat thing that I've been thinking about doing is putting some kind of reverse fork with suspension in here to go into the through axle and support the bike that way, so there's no tire. And then I might be able to build something that can do the steering thing in Zwift that way, and also have some suspension, and also keep it so that the front of the bike is attached to the platform as well as the back of the bike. Speaking of attachment at the back of the bike, one of the big value adds that I've enjoyed, as you can see this clamp right here on the back there. That clamp makes it so when you really get at it, sprinting or whatever, the kicker doesn't come off the ground, which was a problem for me when I was doing sprint intervals. Before I got the platform, or the rocker plate, is that the kicker would jump off the ground on the right and left sides as I was really like spinning up for a sprint interval, which didn't make me feel secure, didn't make me feel safe. Where because that's clamped on there, there's no way, and the whole thing just kind of moves. So as you get up, you really get into it, the plate moves, but the kicker stays on the plate and it can't come off because it's attached to it. So that's a major benefit. There's also a major benefit in comfort for distance riding and for shorter distance intervals. It's just a much more natural feeling to have the rocker plate do this with suspension on the side, where before the kicker is attached by gravity to the floor, and even with this foam pad underneath here and a little bit of side-to-side movement, the more side-to-side movement that you get from the suspension, the air suspension in this, is a massive benefit versus the alternative. The other thing that I would change is I would not drill those holes. I'm not sure what those holes are for. I assumed that they were for these valves, these L-shaped valves that come with the inner tubes here, so that you could stick them in there like that and then fill them up, because they're kind of a pain to get in between the two pieces of plywood with air. But that's not where you want that inner tube. You want it there, underneath the place where all your weight is. So yeah, that's not useful. I would not have cut those holes if I had thought about that before I cut them. That's where you want your inner tube. And I sorted that, how do you fill it with air, using a valve extender. And that works really well, but you may notice that there are 2 valve extenders on this side and then 2 on that side for a total of 4 inner tubes underneath the platform, because when I just had 2 tubes in there and I had them at the level of softness that I liked for steady state riding, it would give too much side to side during a sprint interval. And I don't know if that's because I'm a taller rider, which would raise the center of gravity and put more stress on the fulcrum, or if that's just another one of those things that the person who designed this didn't think about, or I don't know. But anyway, 2 additional tubes lets me run less pressure in all 4 tubes. It provides greater resistance, so I get a softer ride, but I get greater resistance when I really get at it for the side-to-side stuff. So that is an easy improvement that anybody could do, whether you buy this kit or you roll your own. Is just to add more suspension elements to get the level of softness when you want softness and firmness when you need it to be more resistant to that side-to-side motion.
So this is as good a time as any to show what it looks like in action. Here we have a sprint interval training session where we start out at an easy power level and then transition to sprint power. This is the default setting with just the 2 tubes. And you can see as the power demand goes up, I'll pause there for a second to let that happen, the plate moves a lot. And this is not a level of movement that I'm comfortable with. And so I ended up adding the additional tubes, which we'll look at now. So this is the same workout, but with 4 tubes instead of 2 tubes. And as we can see, at lower power levels, the amount of rocking is about the same. But then as we get into the sprint interval, the platform is a lot more stable in the amount of rocking that it does, which I find to be significantly more comfortable, maybe just from a peace of mind perspective. I don't know, but it just feels better. So here we have the 4 tubes, but with steady state, where you kind of hold a specific power level for an extended period of time. This is both in the saddle, and then there's a little bit of it where I get out of the saddle, just to demonstrate how the plate performs in this scenario. And then the last bit here is I just turned off the erg mode and then just kind of had a bit of a play. I think it's mostly in the saddle, but you can still kind of see how the plate responds as you move through a few different kinds of power levels.
So in general, I'm very pleased with the concept of a rocker plate. It certainly enhances my comfort level on the trainer, especially for long periods of time, but also for doing things like sprint intervals. I feel safer, I feel more confident doing it because of that clamp over there. It's just a better, more realistic way to ride indoors, and it enhances comfort at the same time. So I would definitely recommend a rocker plate, but I don't think I would recommend this kit unless you can't find the parts, or you really, really, really don't want to put the time in to find them and source them and do all that other stuff. There's value in not waiting for stuff, so there's that. But I wouldn't recommend the kit. The intellectual property that's associated with it is not terribly useful. There's very little that you couldn't do just with sticking your trainer and your bike and whatever else on a big piece of cardboard and cutting something out that would fit, and then that looks kind of like this, and then putting that on some plywood and cutting out two pieces like that. If I was going to do it over again, that's probably what I would do, but I'm very pleased with the rocker plate in general. Hopefully you found this useful. If you did, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments or something you want me to test, put that down in the comment section below and I will get to that as soon as I can. Thanks.